Well, I think it's a beautiful state. I do despair for it sometimes, that it's not as beautiful as it used to be.
That's Florida poet and author Enid Shomer, honored recently with the 2007 Gold Medal in the General Fiction category of the Florida Book Awards. Shomer says she lived in South Florida for a few years as a child, then returned as an adult. Since then, she's lived in just about every part of the state.
Yeah, there's a lot of Florida in my books. A lot of the landscape, a lot of the people. I've always been fascinated by Florida. Probably because of that early childhood experience. I was 3 or 4, and I just thought it was paradise. You know, you could stay outside all year. There were fish, there were birds. I loved to fish. I loved the beach. So then when I got to move back as an adult, it just seemed magical.
Though in the past she's received national recognition for her poetry, this time Shomer won with a book of short stories entitled Tourist Season.
I was particularly gratified that there was no bias against the fact that it was a short story collection. Short stories is a wonderful form, but it's so unusual for stories to get the same respect as a novel.
If there's a common thread in the book, it's women. In this case, women ranging in age from 17 to 78. Women whose lives are in transition.
There are men in the book, but the major characters in this book anyway are women. I don't always write about women, but I think men would enjoy the book too, especially men who want to know more about women. You know, I try to be as honest as I can about what it's like to live in the body of a woman, especially, well, all women are aging, but once you hit 50, you know, things change drastically. And I have some characters who become, quote, invisible, socially invisible by virtue of their age.
The book's first story, Chosen, takes place in Leesburg, Florida, when 2 Tibetan monks appear to notify a middle-aged speech therapist that she is a reincarnated Buddhist saint.
Bowing slightly, the 2 men made their way through the doorway and sat side by side. Their smiles broadened into parades. Their eyes glimmered. "How can I help you?" Iris asked, genuinely curious by now. "We have an annunciation for you." "You mean an announcement?" The correction was automatic. A speech therapist, Iris had spent her professional life listening to deflated vowels and blunted consonants, not to mention simple mispronunciations. The men turned to each other, silently conferring. "No, an annunciation," Mr. Salma insisted.
I think that her dark humor finds its way into the stories. She can be quite a funny writer and a quite fanciful writer, but she's also an ironist, so it doesn't take very long for that humor to take on a different kind of edge.
University of Tampa professor of English Don Morrill is editor of the prestigious Tampa Review.
I find a lot of writers who are just trying to be humorous, gratuitous. I like a little bit more with my humor than that, some other level of understanding.
He says for a writer like Enid Shomer, humor can often be a gateway into certain types of honesty.
I think she's a very honest writer. Certainly when a writer is writing well, that mind's eye, that mentality that's putting that story together is able to see both into the world beyond the words and into the self that's creating those words.
Is it possible that this type of character-driven writing can allow us to see ourselves more clearly?
I think so. Though, I'm distrustful a little bit of writers who are too strenuously trying to hold up a mirror to us. And I don't always read authors who I think are going to tell me about who I am. I'm more interested in authors who have a character that they are interested in. And I read it, and then I come to that character. And if I come to see something of myself in that, that's fine. If I don't, then I come to see something about the nature of the world, about all the other people who might not be like me. I feel we don't value literary art enough, and we certainly don't value imagination enough if we insist that it all has to be about me.
Critics have labeled Shomer's stories surprising and provocative. She says people often ask her if she's making a statement in her work.
Not everyone is writing about character. Some people are writing novels of ideas, but I'm not one of those people. I don't know the idea sometimes myself till I'm all done. I'm never trying to make a statement. I never have an idea that I'm trying to embody. That's not how art works for me anyway. And most of the artists I know, writers and painters and so on, they're not working that way either, where they're encoding something to teach you something or to, make a rhetorical point or make a political point. I just am writing about people.
The book is Tourist Season by Enid Shomer, published by Random House. I'm Bill Dudley. With funding from the Florida Department of State Division of Cultural Affairs, this report was produced by the Florida Humanities Council. Visit us on the web at flahum.org.